In this activity, we're going to do a run-through of the catalase tests and the urease tests in order to provide some figures and some animations that would go along with completing your lab report 16. So first of all, let's talk about what the catalase test is again as a recap. And first of all, we start with the molecule hydrogen peroxide. So there it is on the left, that's H2O2, and that is the molecule that you would find when you go to the drugstore and buy it, say to put on wounds. That's a solution of hydrogen peroxide and water. It breaks down into water and also oxygen. And so what we're looking for is we're going to do a test where we're using a catalase to increase the rate of this reaction. So we're going to see this reaction happen, and when it does, as you see on the right, oxygen is produced. So oxygen in liquid then turns into bubbles. So you're going to see a bubbling reaction, and that's a positive indication that this reaction has occurred. And so again, the reaction is the breakdown of hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen. We're changing hydrogen peroxide with the help of a catalyst. Okay, so at this step here, we do need a catalyst in order to help this reaction along. And for these tests, we're going to have two different choices of the overall type of catalyst that we're going to use. First, we're going to use something called an inorganic catalyst. And you see it here. It's called manganese dioxide. So it's a small, relatively less complex molecule. It is an inorganic molecule compared to organic molecules and definitely biological molecules like enzymes, which can also act as a catalyst. Okay, so that's what living organisms use as catalysts, molecules that increase the rate of a reaction. And in this case, we're going to use the enzyme catalase. So catalase is the enzyme that works on the reaction going from hydrogen peroxide to water and oxygen. And going in that direction, hydrogen peroxide then, because it's the molecule that catalase works on, is its substrate. Okay? So we're going to start with 5 test tubes. And in our first test tube 1, that is filled with tap water. Test tubes 2, 3, 4, and 5 are filled with hydrogen peroxide. Then we're going to add a clean toothpick to our tap water and notice if anything happens. Okay, so we add that here. Let's add one to the hydrogen peroxide and see what happens in this case. Okay, so it seems that the water and the hydrogen peroxide as well seem essentially the same, unchanged compared to before we put the toothpick in. So let's say that has no reaction. Now, let's add a toothpick dipped in manganese dioxide powder here. Okay, so in this case, we're using the catalyst manganese dioxide. Let's dip it into the tap water. Okay, and it appears to be unchanged from what we saw before. So now we're looking for to see if we see any bubbling reaction happen. Now, in the water, we see something like this, where the liquid looks unchanged. And that is for tube 1 with tap water. Let's add a toothpick coated in manganese dioxide to hydrogen peroxide. Okay, so we see some fizzing, common to what you would see if you put hydrogen peroxide on a wound. And let's say it looked something like this, where you saw vigorous bubbling in your test tube once you added the toothpick with manganese dioxide. What I'd like you to do is record your reactions for test tubes 1 and test tubes 2.